Hey everyone, and welcome to Anime Dreams. Excited to have you here on my channel. Today's fanfic topic is, what if the Sage of Six Paths sent Naruko to New Rome? Part 3. Disclaimer, this channel is dedicated to entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage used. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's dive right in. Naruko woke up feeling unusually comfortable. As she looked around, she realized she was in a spacious private room. A weapons rack stood neatly against the wall, and a walk-in closet took up one corner. Aside from a sturdy desk and a large bed, the room was rather simple. The only other notable feature was a tall mirror standing in the corner. Dressed in her usual attire, Naruko stepped out of the room and found her cohort waiting for her in the hallway. Moving to the front, she addressed them with a confident smile. "Good morning, everyone. Since today is my first day leading you, I'm giving you all the day to train as you see fit while I prepare a new training regimen. I'll also be organizing the monthly deliveries of new weapons from the forge. But be ready, tomorrow, we train harder than ever. Wake up earlier than usual, push yourselves to the limit, and give it your all. I promise that by the time we're done, the Legion will recognize your strength once again." The cohort saluted and began dispersing for training. Only Hazel and Frank remained behind. Hazel broke the silence with a teasing smile. "You know, Captain, you never treated me to dinner. I think it's only fair you take me out for breakfast instead." Naruko let out a sigh but nodded in agreement. Frank, on the other hand, seemed hesitant, as if he wanted to say something but was too nervous to speak. Noticing his hesitation, Naruko reassured him, "Frank, I may be the new captain, but we're still friends and comrades. No need to be so formal with me, it makes me feel old." Hazel chuckled. "Yeah, Frank, come on. Join us. Naruko's buying, anyway." Naruko shot her a playful glare, which Hazel returned until Naruko finally gave in. "Fine, come on, Frank. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that upsetting a determined woman is never a good idea." Frank paled slightly but quickly followed them as they made their way to a quaint, old-fashioned diner. As they arrived, Naruko hesitated. "Are you sure this is the place, Hazel? I don't have much, but I can still pay for a decent meal." Hazel raised an eyebrow. "Are you questioning my taste in food, Miss Ramen for breakfast, lunch, and dinner?" Naruko crossed her arms. "Ramen is the food of the gods. Don't try to convince me otherwise." Hazel smirked. "I'm honestly surprised you haven't built a shrine to the ramen god yet." Naruko suddenly froze, her eyes glinting with inspiration. Before Hazel could stop her, she dashed out the door, leaving enough money on the table to cover breakfast. Hazel sighed, watching Naruko disappear into the distance. Frank, noticing the change in her expression, asked, "Something wrong, Hazel?" She offered him a small smile. "It's nothing." Frank gave her a knowing look. "Come on, Hazel. We're friends. You can tell me." Hazel hesitated for a moment before sighing. "I've been trying to get Naruko to notice that I like her for a while now. I've dropped hints, but either she's completely oblivious or she's just too polite to turn me down." Frank grinned. "I'd bet on the first one." Hazel giggled. "Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe I should just say it outright. With all the people chasing her, she probably can't tell who actually wants to be her friend and who just wants to impress her." They both blushed slightly at the conversation before settling down to eat. Meanwhile, Naruko grumbled about her shrine idea being rejected. Apparently, it wasn't considered warlike or Roman enough. A little ironic, considering the Romans borrowed plenty from the Greeks, from architecture to mythology. As she returned to the barracks, she spotted Hazel waiting outside. Feeling a little guilty for running off, she approached her. "Hey, Hazel. Sorry about earlier. I got a little carried away." Hazel shook her head with a smile. "It's fine, Naruko. But I want you to take me out." Naruko sighed. To make it up to you? Hazel giggled but shook her head. No, I mean on a date. Naruko's eyes widened. Really? I've never really been on a date before. I mean, I went out with Reina once, but that was just grabbing food after sparring. Hazel smiled. It's okay, Naruko. I understand. I just want to go out and have a nice meal with you, without you running off to build a shrine to your so-called ramen god. Naruko chuckled nervously. Alright, how does tonight at 6 sound? Hazel's smile widened as she nodded before heading off to get ready. As soon as she disappeared, Naruko felt a wave of panic set in. She quickly found a secluded spot and sat down, closing her eyes to enter her mindscape. Inside the vast meadow of her subconscious, she was met by the familiar sight of Chome, the Seven Tails. The massive insect-like creature looked down at her and chuckled. Great idea coming to me for advice. First thing, don't panic. If she wants to go on a date with you, it's because she likes you for who you are. No need to act like you're sweating in the middle of summer. Naruko sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know how to do this. I mean, I took Reina out for dinner, but I don't think she's interested in me like that. Chome laughed knowingly. Oh, if only you knew. Naruko raised an eyebrow, about to ask what she meant when Kurama walked up. Kit, don't overthink it, Kurama said. It's a date. You might not see it that way, but you took Reina out, and she had a great time because you were honest, kind, and supportive. You were just being yourself. So go back, take a shower, get dressed, and approach this the same way. Talk to her about what she likes, her favorite food and dessert, how she spends her free time, things like that. And if she asks about you, share what you're comfortable with. Naruko smiled at Kurama. Thanks, Fuzzball. I never took you for the thoughtful type, but you give great advice. Kurama smirked. There's a lot you don't know about me, Kit. But Chome was right, you need to stay calm. You tend to get nervous easily. Naruko chuckled at her partner and nodded respectfully to the other tailed beasts before heading off. As she left, Shukaku spoke up. So, Kurama, what else are you hiding from us? I thought we were family. Kurama shot him a glare. Quiet, Shukaku, or I'll have Chome give you a bath. Shukaku gasped in horror. You wouldn't. Kurama smirked before glancing at Chome and giving a small nod. Chome grinned and shot a high-pressure stream of water at Shukaku, sending him flying into the lake with a loud splash. Hold still, Shukaku, Chome teased. This will only be uncomfortable if you resist. Shukaku sputtered, shaking off the water. Easy for you to say. You're not made of sand. Meanwhile, Naruko listened to their bickering in her subconscious, trying not to laugh as she made her way to the barracks to prepare for her evening. After showering and changing into her best outfit, one of the nicest she had available, Naruko made her way to the women's dormitory. Just as she was about to knock, the door opened to reveal Hazel standing there in a lovely gray dress, a bright smile on her face. Naruko couldn't help but stare in awe. Hazel looked so different without her centurion armor. The first word that slipped from Naruko's mouth was beautiful. She didn't even realize she had said it out loud until she saw the blush spreading across Hazel's face. Hazel quickly recovered, though a hint of pink still remained as she responded, You look handsome as always, Naruko. Naruko felt a blush of her own forming but quickly composed herself and offered Hazel her arm, which she gladly took. She led Hazel to a place she had noticed her glancing at a few times during their walks together, a restaurant called the Imperial Lotus. At the reception counter, Naruko confidently said, Uzumaki reservation, table for 2. The receptionist skimmed through the reservation book before nodding. Here you are. Please allow me to show you to your table. The hostess led them through the bustling restaurant to a quieter, more private area in the back. Once they were seated, Hazel couldn't contain her curiosity. How did you manage to get a reservation here? It's nearly impossible to book a table. And you'd have to be earning at least 30 drachma a week to afford this place. The food is incredibly expensive. Naruko chuckled nervously. I did a big job for the owner. He didn't have enough to pay me at the time, so he offered me a reservation and a generous discount as thanks. Turns out, there was a massive infestation of rats and snakes in the basement, and I helped take care of it. Hazel sighed in relief. Oh, that makes sense. I was worried you had done something drastic. She smiled. Well, this is one of the nicest places in New Rome. It's a wonderful choice for a first date. As she said those words, a soft blush returned to her face, and she glanced away. Then, as if changing the subject, she asked, by the way, how old are you, Naruko? Naruko smiled. I turned 18 before I arrived here. Technically, I became an adult at 13 when I left the academy as a Genin. Hazel nodded thoughtfully. So, tell me about the elemental nations. What were they like? Naruko's expression softened as she recalled her homeland. They were beautiful. Nature was the greatest force in my world. My abilities, like Sage Mode, were much stronger there because of the abundance of natural energy. But it wasn't always peaceful. In fact, war was a constant threat. Most shinobi were considered fortunate if they lived through even one war. Villages rarely trusted one another, and spies were everywhere. It was a dangerous way to live. Hazel listened intently. That sounds intense. What made the last war so different from the others? Naruko looked down, instinctively placing a hand over her chest, which Hazel quickly noticed. The war was because of me, Naruko admitted. As I mentioned when we first met, the Baijuu were seen as powerful weapons. A group of highly skilled rogue shinobi, calling themselves the Akatsuki, sought to use them to create an illusion of peace, a world without conflict, where anything we desired could be within reach. Hazel smiled at the thought and remarked, that sounds like a dream come true. Naruko lifted her gaze to meet Hazel's. That's exactly what it was, a dream. But it was one we couldn't wake up from. So many people fought to ensure it didn't become reality. I lost countless friends in that war. I watched as they risked everything, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Sensing the weight of Naruko's words, Hazel gently placed her hand over Naruko's on the table. I can't pretend to fully understand how you feel, Naruko. That wouldn't be fair. But what I do know is that you're not alone. You don't have to carry this burden by yourself. Naruko smiled softly. Thank you, Hazel-chan. I really needed that. Hazel tilted her head in curiosity. Chan? Naruko suddenly realized what she had said and felt warmth rush to her cheeks. Hazel didn't miss a beat and smirked as she noticed the blush. What was that suffix, Naruko? What does it mean? Naruko quickly looked away, her embarrassment growing, but before she could answer, their food arrived, saving her from having to explain. Hazel momentarily forgot about the conversation and focused on her meal, eating with enough composure to appear polite while still enjoying the food. Once they had finished, Naruko paid the bill, and as they stepped outside, Hazel playfully hugged her arm. Thanks for the meal, Naruko. I really had fun tonight. Naruko smirked, causing Hazel to raise a curious brow. Who said the night is over? There's still one more thing I planned, and I think you'll like it. Intrigued, Hazel followed as Naruko led her beyond the gates of New Rome and into the nearby woods. As they walked deeper, Hazel's imagination ran wild, wondering why they were heading so far out. Eventually, they reached the edge of the protective barrier. Naruko let go of Hazel and stepped forward before turning back with a knowing smile. Are you ready, Hazel? Hazel felt a sudden nervousness creeping in, her thoughts racing. However, before she could speak, Naruko began to glow. A warm golden energy wrapped around her, forming a radiant cloak that flickered like flames. Hazel stood in awe, mesmerized by the beautiful golden aura. Naruko chuckled. I'm not done yet. Before Hazel could ask what she meant, the golden glow began to fade, revealing Naruko's skin turning a pale shade. A black staff materialized in her palm, solid and powerful. This is my Sage of Six Paths form, Naruko explained. Or Rikudo Senin mode. As if to prove a point, Naruko made the staff vanish and stepped closer to Hazel, wrapping her in a warm embrace. Leaning in, she whispered, "And with it, I can do this." Before Hazel could react, Naruko gently tightened her hold, ensuring Hazel was secure before taking off into the sky. Hazel let out a surprised gasp, instinctively wrapping her arms around Naruko to keep steady. But as she opened her eyes, her initial shock was replaced by wonder. Below them, the lights of New Rome shimmered, flickering one by one as the moon rose over the ocean. The water below reflected the silver glow, rippling softly with the night breeze. The Senate House stood illuminated, and above them, the sky stretched out, filled with endless stars. Overwhelmed by the breathtaking sight, Hazel felt a single tear escape down her cheek. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Naruko smiled, then turned to admire the view herself. But before she could fully take it in, Hazel gently pulled her attention back. Before Naruko could ask what was wrong, she was silenced by the soft press of Hazel's lips against hers. Naruko's eyes widened in surprise at the sudden warmth. After a few moments, Hazel pulled back, her expression both shy and sincere. "Sorry, I just..." That was as far as she got before Naruko gently wrapped her left arm around Hazel while raising her right hand to lift her chin. With a warm smile, she placed a soft kiss on Hazel's lips. Hazel's breath hitched for a moment, but she soon relaxed, wrapping her arms around Naruko's neck and pulling her closer. The two remained in place, lost in the embrace, until the need for air made them part, both taking a deep breath. Hazel reached up and gently traced her fingers over the faint whisker-like marks on Naruko's cheeks. A quiet, almost purring sound escaped Naruko's throat, making Hazel laugh joyfully and throw her head back. With effortless grace, Naruko carried them back to the barracks without being noticed, releasing her special energy mode upon landing. Hazel placed a quick kiss on Naruko's lips and said with a bright smile, "Thank you for tonight, Naruko. This has been the best evening I've ever had." Naruko returned the smile. "You're very welcome. I hope we can do this again sometime." Growing closer. Ever since their first date, Hazel and Naruko had grown even closer. They were nearly inseparable, spending time together whenever they could. Frank, one of Hazel's friends, couldn't help but feel a bit jealous of the attention Naruko received from her. It had been a few weeks since their first date, and they had made it a tradition to go out once every weekend. As they strolled hand in hand along the Tiber River, Hazel turned to Naruko with curiosity. "So, what's the plan for today?" Naruko rested her chin on her hand, deep in thought. "Well, we could go see that new movie in town. You mentioned you wanted to see it." Hazel's eyes lit up with excitement. "You mean King of Sparta with Tristan McLean?" Naruko chuckled at her enthusiasm and nodded. Hazel let out a cheerful squeal and quickly kissed Naruko on the cheek. "You're the best. I hope you know that." Naruko grinned at the praise. "I do my best to keep you happy." However, Hazel's excitement faded as she noticed four dark figures approaching from the hillside. One was a teenage boy with ocean blue eyes and black hair, carrying an elderly woman. The other three had a snake-like appearance, their bodies covered in reptilian scales, and long, flowing hair with razor-sharp claws, undoubtedly Gorgons. Naruko's expression grew serious as she turned to Hazel. "Stay here. I'll go help him." Hazel looked at her with concern. "Be careful, Naruko." Naruko gave her a reassuring smile before vanishing in a blur. By the time she reached the scene, the young boy had collapsed on the shore of the Tiber, while the elderly woman beside him smiled kindly. "So, you are the child of prophecy," the woman said. "I must admit, the stories I have heard about you are truly remarkable. It takes great strength to challenge a divine being." Naruko's grip on her sword tightened as she held it in a reverse stance. "Another deity, huh? This kid must be new if he hasn't sensed the immense power coming from you. I'm surprised the Gorgons didn't realize it sooner." The woman's smile remained unchanged. "Your perception is as sharp as a finely crafted blade. The tales about you were not exaggerated. You will be quite valuable in the times ahead. Naruko pointed her sword at the mysterious figure. I don't let fate dictate my path. As you already know, I'm not from this world. In theory, that means the gods of fate have no power to bind me to their will. The woman's eyes gleamed with intrigue. Would you be willing to test that theory? The power of fate extends to every living being. If you are mistaken, the consequences may be quite unexpected. Naruko smirked confidently. I've always challenged destiny. I see no reason to stop now. The woman chuckled softly. You truly were one of my finest ideas. I am pleased that I sent Hestia to find you. Naruko fixed a determined gaze on the goddess. I'm here to take responsibility for my actions. I've heard about what you deities did to Gia, and now you wonder why she stirs? I can understand your perspective. Perhaps Kronos' punishment was warranted for what he did to you and your siblings, but the way it was carried out was harsh. Honestly, I have no personal investment in what happens to the gods, but I do care about the innocent lives that will be affected by your conflict. The goddess let out a sigh and met Naruko's eyes. I understand why you resent us, but I have risked my own existence to protect the mortals. Naruko's expression remained firm. That may be true, but it doesn't erase the fact that you and the other gods have interfered in mortal affairs since ancient times. Let's be honest, gods are often driven by self-interest. From where I stand, there's little difference between the gods and Kaguya. The goddess narrowed her eyes at Naruko. We may have involved ourselves in the lives of mortals over the centuries, but our influence has also helped them progress to where they are today. Naruko was growing frustrated. And what has been achieved? Where I come from, we faced 4 great wars, yet here, only 3 have occurred, and the consequences have already far surpassed our own. These conflicts were started by the Romans and Greeks, the children of the gods. No matter how much good you believe you are doing, it will never fully make up for the countless lives affected by divine interference in the mortal world. The goddess's stern expression softened at Naruko's words. Then how do you suggest we make amends for what we have done? Naruko's eyes held compassion. You may not be able to undo the past, but that doesn't mean you can't try to make things right. Start by correcting past injustices. I've read about Calypso, set her free. Zeus punished her for her father's actions, but that does not mean she should suffer for them. The goddess's gaze lost its intensity, and she gave a small, thoughtful smile. You show more potential to guide us toward redemption than I initially believed. I can see now how our actions have led to great hardships. I will do my best to atone for our mistakes. Naruko returned the smile. Which goddess are you, anyway? I can tell you're divine, but I don't know exactly who you are. The goddess smiled. I am Juno, goddess of marriage. I foresee that you will have a happy and fulfilling home life, if you manage to navigate the trials ahead. With that, Juno disappeared in a flash of golden light, leaving Naruko alone with the unconscious boy. Without hesitation, Naruko lifted him onto her shoulder and carried him to the infirmary. Naruko remained by his side the entire day, patiently waiting for him to wake up. Eventually, she heard a faint groan and turned to see the boy stirring. He blinked up at her in confusion. Where am I? Naruko regarded him seriously. You're in the infirmary in New Rome. My name is Naruko Uzumaki. I found you unconscious on the riverbank. The boy, still lying down, nodded slowly. I don't remember much from before I woke up. But my name is Percy. Percy Jackson. Naruko smiled reassuringly. Well, Percy, since you swam through the Tiber, you should know that you've lost the blessing of Achilles. That means you're no longer invulnerable, you can be hurt now. Percy looked at her, puzzled. Blessing of Achilles? Naruko nodded. To receive that ability, one must bathe in the river Styx in the underworld. The last person to gain it was Achilles himself. That means either you're not telling the full truth, or someone has erased your memories. Percy studied his hands, frustration evident on his face. Erased. Annabeth? He murmured. Naruko could tell he wasn't lying, and she sympathized with him. Hey, Percy, don't worry too much. I've had my head knocked around so many times that I could write a book on memory loss. Your memories will come back in time. Now, come on, it's tradition to introduce newcomers to the Praetor. Percy sighed but nodded, slowly rising to his feet. Seeing how unsteady he was, Naruko wrapped his arm around her shoulder to support him as they walked. As they made their way forward, Percy glanced at Naruko. So, who is this Praetor? Naruko smiled ahead. She's a good friend and an incredible leader. Percy noticed the admiration in Naruko's eyes and smirked. From the way you talk about her, I'd say you really respect her. Expecting a chuckle, Percy was instead met with a sharp, unamused look. Reina is an exceptional person and a strong leader. I already have someone important in my life, and I suggest you be mindful of your words, especially around Reina or my girlfriend. Seeing the serious expression on Naruko's face, Percy quickly raised his hands in surrender. Got it, won't say anything like that again. Naruko's expression softened into a teasing grin. Good choice. But fair warning, if Reina heard anything inappropriate, she'd send her mechanical wolves after you. And their bites? They're not just painful, they're also poisonous to demigods. Percy instinctively tensed, placing a protective hand over himself. Seeing this, Naruko burst into laughter. Relax, newbie. Just be respectful, and you'll be fine. Percy nodded quickly as they entered the Senate. Reina's lips curled into a smile as she noticed Naruko entering with Percy. Hey, Naruko, is this the child you found by the shore? Naruko nodded. Yeah, he says he doesn't remember much beyond his name. I couldn't sense any dishonesty from him, but his presence feels incredibly strong. If I had to guess, I'd say this is the work of the gods. If my instincts are correct, then he's already been claimed. Reina's expression grew thoughtful as she furrowed her brows. That's unusual. Typically, a demigod isn't claimed until after they arrive here. This brings up many questions but offers no clear answers. My name is Reina, and I am the Praetor. What's yours? Percy looked up at her and offered a small smile. I'm Percy Jackson. Reina nodded and turned back to Naruko. I'll leave him under your care until we can determine who his parents are. Dismissed. Naruko nodded and guided Percy toward the cohort's barracks. Welcome to the team, Percy. But once you're able to move again, you're going to wish you had actually broken your legs. Percy broke into a nervous sweat at the mischievous smile on Naruko's face. He wasn't sure he wanted to know, but curiosity got the better of him. Why? Naruko's grin widened as she glanced at him. Because I push my team beyond their limits. You'll see firsthand when your new brothers and sisters give you a demonstration. Percy gulped, already regretting waking up. When they reached the barracks, Hazel was there to greet them. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around Naruko's neck and pulled her into a warm embrace, which Naruko gladly returned. Welcome back, Naruko. Is this the new recruit? Hazel asked. Naruko nodded. Hazel, this is Percy Jackson. Percy, meet my girlfriend, Hazel, daughter of Pluto, or Hades, if you're thinking in Greek terms. Percy smiled and extended a hand, which Hazel took, only for him to flinch as her grip nearly crushed his fingers. Strong handshake, he muttered. Is everyone here like this? Naruko laughed while Hazel giggled. Nope, that's just the result of the training program you'll be going through soon. Hazel playfully widened her eyes in mock horror. But Naruko? He's just a boy. You're going to break him in the first week. Naruko chuckled. Well, if he can't handle it, he can always practice traditional Roman combat instead. From the barracks windows, Percy caught glimpses of pitying looks from other legionnaires. It seemed they already knew he was joining the 5th cohort. Just then, Frank stepped out of the door, wearing the same sympathetic expression. He placed a hand on Percy's shoulder. Name's Frank. Before you start training, just know, Naruko doesn't force anyone to do it. But trust me, it'll be good for you. If you can handle it. Percy could almost feel his muscles protesting in advance. Naruko laughed heartily. Come on, Frank, don't scare him. The training won't be that bad. Even kids can do it. Frank shot her a look. Kids who have been training since they could walk. You're a prime example, Miss I can crush mountains. Naruko crossed her arms and huffed. That was an accident. And you all wouldn't stop pestering me until I showed you my Rasen Shuriken. Frank wasn't convinced. Right. And if that was an accident, then Percy's situation is looking even more impossible. He pointed at Percy, who was now officially worried about what this training entailed. Naruko smirked. Well, Frank, you just volunteered to demonstrate Course 6. Frank paled and turned to run, but Naruko grabbed his collar before he could escape. Where do you think you're going, my oh-so-precious volunteer? Frank immediately dropped to his hands and knees, mumbling prayers to any god that might take pity on him. Naruko simply pulled him outside, leaving Percy sitting against the wall, watching in confusion. As Naruko placed a piece of paper on Frank's back, Percy turned to Hazel. What's so bad about Course 6? Hazel looked almost concerned for Frank, but she knew this was necessary. Ever since she and Naruko had started dating, Frank had become a bit reckless. She understood that his behavior could put everyone in danger on a real quest or in battle, so she allowed Naruko to handle it. She turned back to Percy. Course 6 is one of the hardest levels in our training system. There are 12 in total, but only Naruko has ever completed them all. And it's not just because she designed them, she made them as tough as possible to challenge herself. But of course, there's a limit to how difficult training can be before it stops being effective. Percy nodded slowly, still watching Frank. So, why is he just sitting there if this is a course? Hazel's expression grew serious as she explained, this technique originates from her homeland. It allows the person bearing the seal to experience key moments from Naruko's past, spanning from her early battles as a child up until she departed a few months ago. The illusions are remarkably vivid, immersing the individual in significant events from Naruko's life. Right now, Frank is experiencing the Chunin exam's illusion. This technique not only grants him Naruko's understanding of the situation but also makes him feel her emotions toward the people involved. It's almost as if he is reliving her memories firsthand. Percy watched in astonishment as Frank arched his back, letting out a pained cry while the seal on his back gradually faded away. As the illusion ended, Frank took a deep breath and shot an exasperated look at Naruko. Sometimes, I really don't appreciate this. Naruko gave him a knowing smile. You're welcome. Now step aside so I can introduce Percy to Zabuza. Frank glanced at Percy with concern but stepped aside. Naruko smiled warmly at Percy. Hey, Percy. Ready to go? This is just level 1, so even someone without training could handle it. Percy looked uncertain but walked forward, not realizing his strength had already returned. Just before he sat down, Naruko placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Just so you know, time will pass much faster in the illusion. You'll experience all of my past challenges and hardships, but you'll also be able to interact with the world as if you were really there. You'll be joining my old team on our first major mission together. They will respond to you as if you were me, and all of your abilities will carry over into the illusion. Naruko and Hazel stayed close, watching over Percy for an hour until his eyes suddenly snapped open, and he gasped in shock. The seal on his back dissolved into harmless ash. Naruko patted Percy on the back as he caught his breath, sweat dripping down his face. He looked at her, eyes wide with disbelief. How did you ever get through that? Naruko smirked playfully. If that was enough to get you asking that, then let's hope you never reach levels 11 or 12. Even now, I still have nightmares about those. The idea that something could be even more intense than what he had just experienced sent a shiver down Percy's spine. If ordinary people could handle something like this, then how strong did he really need to be? Noticing Percy's thoughtful expression, Naruko gave him an encouraging smile. Percy, I made it through because of my feelings for my friends. I wanted to protect them, no matter what. But remember, those were just illusions. Deep down, you knew they weren't real, so you held yourself back. In a real challenge, I believe you'd rise to the occasion. Percy smiled at her words and nodded. Thanks, Naruko. I was wondering. Is there any way to get faster? Those guys were moving so fast I could barely keep up. Naruko's lips curled into a mischievous grin. Get ready, Percy Jackson. By the time I'm done with you, just the sight of you will make an army of Cyclopes tremble. Percy had the sudden urge to run from the look Naruko was giving him, but he stood his ground. Naruko tossed him a few small slips of paper, earning a confused expression. Attach these to your wrists. It's similar to the seal I used for the illusion, but this one focuses more on your physical abilities. Percy followed her instructions and immediately felt the weight. His arms suddenly felt as if they were filled with stones, making every movement more difficult. He looked up at Naruko for an explanation. They're specialized seals, she explained. If used properly, they can enhance abilities, store supplies without adding weight, and even create powerful defenses. Percy gave a nervous chuckle. This isn't going to make me explode or anything, right? Naruko laughed at the comment but walked away, leaving Percy standing there with a slightly worried expression. He had been completely serious about his question. Later that day, Naruko spent time with Hazel. The two of them returned to the peaceful clearing where they had shared their first date. Sitting beneath a large tree, Hazel leaned her head against Naruko's shoulder as they enjoyed the quiet moment together. After a while, Hazel broke the silence. Hey, Naruko? Naruko turned to her. Yes, Hazel-chan? Hazel still wasn't quite sure what the honorific meant but chose to ignore it. Once this whole situation with Gia is over, what happens next? You'll probably want to return home, right? But I want to stay with you. Naruko could see the worry in Hazel's eyes and gently pulled her into a warm embrace, making Hazel blush. That depends on what happens between now and then, Naruko said thoughtfully. The future isn't set in stone. But if I'm being honest, I want you to come with me. In my world, there aren't monsters constantly chasing after demigods. Things have become peaceful. And besides, I might not even be able to go back. The gods have a way of meddling in people's lives, and knowing how mine started, they might just decide to make me stay, maybe even make me immortal, just for their own amusement. Naruko shivered at the thought. Hazel smiled softly and wrapped her arms around Naruko's neck in a gentle hug. Thanks, Naruko. I guess we'll figure it out when the time comes. It's too soon to assume the gods would just send you home so easily. For now, neither of them had all the answers. But in that moment, just being together was enough. Naruko gently ran her hand along Hazel's back, sending a pleasant shiver through her before wrapping her arms around Hazel's waist and pulling her closer. Their gaze met before Naruko leaned in, sharing a warm and affectionate kiss. The moment deepened as they lost themselves in each other's presence. A sudden snap of a twig pulled them from their quiet moment. Percy stood nearby, his face flushed with embarrassment. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll just come back later, he stammered, turning away quickly. Hazel shot him a mildly annoyed look but stopped when Naruko called him back. Wait, Percy. New recruits don't usually wander out here alone unless there's something important going on. What's up? Percy, still flustered, quickly straightened and responded, I just found out something really strange. I can heal when I step into water. I was sparring with Frank earlier, and he managed to land a hit on me. I fell into the river, and the water actually healed my wound within seconds. Naruko's eyes filled with curiosity. That's not something you see every day. Most people here don't have a natural healing ability like that. Hazel, I need to look into this with Kurama, it might help us figure out who Percy's godly parent is. Hazel sighed but nodded in understanding, stepping aside as Naruko stood. All right, Percy, what I'm about to do is strictly between us. Only Reina, Hazel, and I know about this ability. If Octavian found out, it could cause complications. Percy gave a serious nod, agreeing to keep the matter private. But his expression quickly shifted to shock as Naruko was suddenly surrounded by a golden glow of chakra. As the energy radiated around her, she appeared to be deep in conversation with herself. "Kurama, you see what I see, right?" she murmured. Percy exchanged a confused glance with Hazel, who seemed more accustomed to Naruko's unusual habits. After a few moments, Naruko turned back to Percy and placed a hand on his shoulder. A wave of warmth flowed through him as the glow intensified for a brief moment before fading. When Naruko pulled back, her expression was a mix of surprise and intrigue. Hazel immediately took notice and asked with concern, "What is it, Naruko? Is something wrong?" Naruko shook her head with a reassuring smile before turning serious again. "Kurama is telling me something interesting. Your blood contains traces of salt. Since blood is largely made of water, that could mean only one thing. The only god associated with the sea at this level is Neptune. Or Poseidon, if you prefer the Greek name." Hazel's eyes widened in shock. "Wait. Are you saying?" Naruko nodded. "It's extremely rare. In fact, the only other demigod I know with such a strong divine connection is Hazel, who is a daughter of Pluto. Percy, it seems you're a son of Neptune." Percy stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the revelation. "Am my father is the god of the sea?" he finally managed to say. "It certainly seems that way," Naruko affirmed. "We should inform Reina, she'll want to hear this." With a determined nod, Percy and Hazel followed Naruko as they made their way toward the Senate to deliver the news. A hidden cave. Deep within a dark cavern, a heavy sigh echoed through the still air before a voice rumbled to life. "Another child of those powerful gods," Gia murmured, her tone filled with both frustration and intrigue. "This complicates things. If I am to succeed, I may need Naruko on my side. But why? Why do I feel this strange pull whenever she is near?" A troubled silence settled over the cavern as Gia closed her eyes, lost in thought. "It's been so long since I felt this warmth. It reminds me of the time when Uranus and I first met, a time filled with wonder. But how could I possibly feel this way now? She stands in my way. Yet my heart wavers." Gia let out another sigh, this time filled with frustration. "Why now? After all these years? Why does my heart choose to stir?" My wonderful YouTube family. This marks the final chapter of this incredible fanfic journey. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. Thank you for your love and support. Anime Dreams.